half boy, half god, all Apollo. You're listening to Ranking Rick Riordan, a podcast about ranking Rick Riordan and Percy Jackson and the whole wide rest of the Riordanverse. I'm Dan.
I'm Olga.
And I'm Clara. And today we're discussing the Trials of Apollo, Book 1, The Hidden Oracle.
This episode is brought to you by Brazilian bandanas. If you're in a bind, a bandana is a perfect find. Infused with luck and national pride, Brazilian bandanas can solve any problem. Just whip it out, give it a wag, and watch your enemies crumble. Side effects may include rage-fueled Portuguese rants. Brazilian bandanas, the better way to bandana.
And that was brought to you by Olga's imagination and my editing.
Yes.
So that's why she's singing it. And by singing, I mean speaking it.
Okay.
Anyway, so we're on video, guys, for the first time in a while because we're starting a new series. So maybe I think we're going to try to do this from now on. We'll see how it goes. So if you want to see our faces for some reason, you can do so at youtube.com/DoingOK. That's DoingOK. Also, we're sorry we've been like a little MIA. Took us a while to get through this book, but let's talk about it.
Yeah, I think that'll tell you our thoughts.
I want to cut in here. We just finished doing this whole podcast, and we realized we are very negative, especially at the start of the podcast.
Yes. For our brand.
So we just want to give you a preface. Yes, this is our one of our least favorite books.
I would say our least favorite.
Yes. And so, that doesn't mean we hate the series. I am excited to talk about the next book, but, fair warning.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. We promise that we find things to compliment.
Yes.
There are things that we like about it. It's not a total pooping on it the whole time, but just be warned if this is somehow one of your favorites. Please don't be mad at us and just bear with us.
I think the last 30% of the book is the best part of the book.
Me too. And legit really good. And I think that's why also you'll hear us say a lot of really negative things for a long time and then it'll get positive all of a sudden.
Yeah. So
here we go. So Clara, Trials of Apollo, thoughts?
I think I had a problem going from the Kane Chronicles to this.
Mm-hmm.
I kept on texting Dan because I couldn't text Olga because I didn't want to do any spoilers by accident. I just wanted more Kane Chronicles. There were only 3. Apollo isn't as good as Carter and Sadie.
Yeah.
It was hard being in this universe without Percy as much.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was weird. It felt like getting dragged back somewhere, and not all in a bad way, but
I think you can play off that well.
This was painful.
To be clear, the second book is better, guys.
Yeah.
I believe it.
I mean, Dan kind of warned us, so you had read it before.
But I think it's hilarious that despite me warning, usually if I warn you, it's like, well, it's not as bad as you said.
No, it was worse. I literally was thinking that, Dan always warns me about something that I might not like.
Mm-hmm.
No, I struggle bust this so hard. And I actually read a good chunk of it all at once.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just need to get through this.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had, our scheduling delays. And I was like, I do not want to pick this up again.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to not know what happens. And that's kind of saying something. That's me not giving a crap about this character or any of these characters.
I think my first text to you about this was a screenshot that then I said horrifying. I needed to check. I needed to find it.
That's really funny.
And then Godric, why?
Okay, so I want to say what this felt like reading.
Yeah,
because
I
keep complaining about this was not good. It felt like a different writer was doing this.
Yeah.
It felt like it was either a very good fan fiction or a not so great ghostwriter.
Mm-hmm.
I did not feel like Rick's heart was in this, or that he realized what kind of books he was trying to break his formula too much. He was trying to.
Well, I appreciate the attempt to change up the formula and not have a real quest.
Right. That's not the issue.
Yeah.
It's the delivery.
Yeah. I think so. I did not like it the first time I read it. which made it even harder, I feel like, for me to reread. Because I was like, I need to reread it. I don't remember that much, but I have to read it a second time. I don't want to do this. I ended up listening at 1.5 speed on the audiobook. Look, it's not a terrible book. We're going to complain about it more than maybe it deserves. I don't know. It's fine. It's fine.
Like Clara said, coming off of Kane Chronicles, the comparison, that's what we're doing. We're ranking. We're making these things relative to each other.
Yeah. It feels like either he rushed it, he knew like a third of what he wanted it to be, but just like hadn't fully figured it out. Like there are definitely Rick things about this book. There's definitely Rick humor for sure. There's definitely him like trying to push his diversity stuff farther than it had been in the past. And I think that there are some like fun, good ideas for sure. Some pretty solid character work. I think the biggest problem for me is honestly the pacing and the action. I
have huge issue with characterizations.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Chiron, what was up with him?
I'm specifically talking about Meg and Apollo.
Okay.
But yes, feel free to go on about that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Chiron, doofiest person ever.
I'm
Rachel,
like ready for Chiron to be killed off. To be straight, like,
won't mourn him at this point. What good is he? Like, I don't know. Percy can take over. It's fine. He can run the camp after he gets his like masters in camp activities. Rachel Elizabeth Dare, moony-eyed, like weird. I understand her anger, but like crushing on Apollo. Like
she's
what?
like weirdly jealous.
Yeah, Percy, he was good. He was consistent. Like that was fine and funny.
Yeah.
And same with like Sally. That was a great interstitial, and I thought it gave me hope. And then my hopes were shattered. Who else was just like? Nico.
Let's talk about Nico.
What the hell?
Nico and Will get together off screen. It's not just like they get together off screen or like there was a wedding and we didn't see it or like this one event. Like, no, their entire relationship happened off screen. Yeah.
Which is a weird MO for him because he did the same thing with Piper and Jason, but it's much worse here.
Much worse.
Because Nico, like, him getting together with a guy is like core to his journey,
and just him having like a close person in his life, like let alone a romantic relationship, just having someone he's close to, and he's clearly loosened up a lot, but all happened off screen, so I have no freaking clue.
Well, that was the thing when we finished Blood of Olympus. I had to hold my tongue a little bit, but like. That was basically Nico's whole journey. Like, it's done now, it seems like.
I am so upset about that. And let me be clear, happy for my boy Nico, but very unhappy that we didn't get to see this good thing for him. What? So we only get his tragedy. You know what? That's what it is. Like, we spend a lot of time with him being unhappy with himself, feeling really scared about who he is. And then we just jump through him, like, becoming close to someone. We don't get any of that.
Yeah, I feel like he felt like he squeezed it into the last, like, I don't know, 20% of Blood of Olympus, but
Rick,
it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
He didn't sound like Nico. He was the one character that really didn't sound like Nico.
It was really bad. Okay. Oh, he's happy now, so he's quippy. Like, no. That, like, Nico would
still be a goth.
Still is like, it's not like Rick forgets it. He's like, oh, Apollo calls out like, oh, those children of Hades, always like morbid and whatever. And it's like, yeah, that's good. But also he's like, I've got a doctor's note from Will.
And like, honestly, if that was the only thing, I could let it go.
Right.
But it's like almost every line is he's like happy-go-lucky jokester. Like the fact that he's the one like handing out tickets to punch Leo.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not against the punching Leo part, but the fact that it was Nico doing it just didn't make sense.
Here's the thing. I can imagine Rick has a really beautiful story in his mind about how, like, once Nico does feel like he can be close to people, he does feel like he can be himself, then he's able to, like, he's been having all these jokes in his head this whole time and not sharing them because he's like, that's how he copes with his, like, I don't know, whatever it is that Rick has in his mind. I feel like he has a whole story about Nico, but he didn't tell it. And so we just jumped.
Well, I think it was a huge misstep to not just make Will and Nico like the actual support, like the main supporting cast members of this book.
Why
because
not?
you could have had them like be just still flirtatious and get together during the book as the main side people. Because like, so, you know, without going into major detail, one of the things that I think makes the second book much better is that the main side characters are Leo and Calypso. People we actually like, they're not just cameos the way Percy is. Percy is just like there to like be like, hey, remember Percy?
Yeah.
Like
to transition you into the world again. And
where it's like, I feel like Percy and Nico are just there as like color. And kind of like we were saying about the fan fiction thing, where it's like, oh, look, our original character is interacting with Percy and his mom. Like, So
here we've talked about the continuity from like the series overall. Let's get into the specifics about our feelings about Apollo and Meg. They are our main characters in this book.
I think the book gets significantly better in the second half, personally, or maybe the last third. I don't know. But like once they actually go into the forest, I think the book gets a lot better because I think Apollo's writing gets a lot more interesting. And I think Meg gets a lot more interesting. And I do think that Meg is an interesting character because I like her backstory. I don't really like her.
Yeah.
And I was interested to see what you would think about that.
Yeah. I completely, as usual, I think we agree on like which characters we like.
Yeah.
I'm so disappointed by Meg. Like, well, so her age feels weird too, as usual. Like, but this time she seems too young to be 12 or whatever age it is that like Sadie starts dating a 16-year-old. I mean, like, I get like middle schoolers have all sorts of different like, you know, whatever, but also she feels very young. And that's okay,
they said she's a very young 12.
Right.
That's in the book canon.
Yeah. I hate saying like I don't care for Meg. Like I love all my characters equally, but I don't care for Meg. But I don't. I am sorry.
And I can't quite grasp why. Like I part of the thing, I think one of the biggest failings of the book is that I don't know where it switches from him hating her / being annoyed by her to him being like, Meg is the most important person in my life.
What could I do without her? It's like, there needs to be a transition of him being like, well, I have to finish serving her. So it's like begrudging. I don't understand when she starts caring about him either.
Yeah.
Like in a significant way. I know they have like a couple conversations where they're like, they're there basically, but that's not enough.
Yeah, like they protect each other a few times, but
I will say I think there is a moment for Apollo when he is thinking about like Meg seems like she has experienced abuse at the hands of a parent. Yeah. And he thinks about Zeus.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, so he can relate to her. It's just the level of how important she becomes to him as like the most important person in his life in a book where he's with multiple children of his own.
Yeah.
Like it just, and where he's totally okay after she betrays him too. Yeah. Like he feels hurt, but he like not even really for more than like 10 seconds is he in any way like angry with her, which
I don't buy that either. He's like in such like, I'm a disappointment, I'm horrible, I'm like the worst god ever mode that he like internalizes that and like sees her tragedy and like that's not a bad thing. That is interesting, but I did want more. I mean, my other feelings.
Not only do I think the reason I really feel like they didn't earn it is because I should be with him on that journey where it clicks and I go, I love Meg too. I want him to save Meg. And I just don't get there. No. I feel like they're telling me that Meg is the best person as opposed to showing me.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And then I think it's that combined with the like vaguely manic pixie dream girl thing she has going on. Like for a 12-year-old. Yeah. But it's a sort of thing of she's this wild child and like she wears like
crazy clothes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
flashing colors.
She eats like uncivilized
Yeah.
and does cartwheels wherever and belches
Yeah.
and blows raspberries. I'm like, that's where-
not an endearing quality. to
and
me.
it's also not, you're telling me what she does. You're not showing me like who she is. And
Yeah.
yes, she's keeping it secret, but like, yeah, that's when she becomes her most interesting.
Yeah.
When she has a personality
Yeah.
that is like
Well-
at war. I don't know, when she has conflict.
And also, like, how much of her, and I hate to say this, again,
Mhm.
I'll keep prefacing that because
Yeah.
Meg is someone I really want to like because
Yeah.
the book keeps telling me I should like
well,
her.
and
And, also,
I
she's
do,
12.
and I do think the abuse storyline is really
But
Yeah.
this is what I was going to
Yeah.
say is how much of her personality is that
Mhm.
compared to a personality? Like, it seems really unfair that her personality is that she has trauma.
Mhm.
Like, the part of the personality that we like is her trauma.
Yeah.
Seems like very unfair.
Yeah, the part of her personality that isn't the trauma is that she is annoying.
Right. Like, that's kind of, that's really unfortunate.
Yeah, like-
Maybe I'm being so unfair to
I don't
her,
think
but-
you are. I mean, like,
I think we're all
honestly-
on the same
And
page.
to be clear, it's a fine line between annoying but endearing, and I just don't like her just asking questions all the time to create exposition lines.
Yeah.
Not interesting. Her like throwing things at Seymour's head. Like I don't care. Like it's just none of the things that she did were appealing to me. I don't know.
It really just, again, getting back to the fanfic feel, it felt like a self-insert OC character that the writer, a teenage
A
girl,
12-year-old
yeah,
writer.
like a tween was
Yeah.
like writing, like, I dress like this and I always want to express myself this way and people find me abrasive and I don't care. Look, I'm going to make everybody like me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm
I-
going to be powerful. And I love
Yeah.
nature. So, and all this. So I'm going to be the daughter of Demeter because there actually isn't a daughter of Demeter that matters in the book yet. So I'll be like the
Yeah.
first important one.
Yeah, that was also like,
Yeah.
it just felt like, well, why is she the daughter of Demeter?
Yeah.
Like, does that matter?
Yeah.
So she can have a car post.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like this is the thing. Even the things that I like about her, I have like an but thing. Like I do like her powers that we have different powers. I like that she fights with the two swords. But yeah, it does feel like she's a little OP just to be like she's perfect. Everybody should love her. But I don't know. I do think she is fun playing off of Apollo, and her making fun of him is probably the most endearing part of her character.
She's the kid you're stuck babysitting because the parents aren't actually comfortable with her being alone yet, but she could definitely take care of herself. So why are you stuck babysitting her? And she resents you for babysitting her because she thinks she's old enough. I babysat this child
This is
and
very
it sucks.
Yeah, this is really personal for you.
I just connected two dots, guys.
So let's say what we liked about the book. Do we have some positives?
Percy was in it. Leo was in it.
Okay.
Calypso was in it.
I overall like Apollo in this book.
I got there.
He starts off and they succeeded with Apollo in the way that they didn't succeed with Meg, where he starts off and is annoying,
Mhm.
but by the end, I am endeared to him.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And the thing that I felt like Rick was having the most joy writing this book was writing Apollo's brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, like, did every joke hit? No. But did some of, like, I love the thing of him making up mansplaining.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
there were a lot of, like, quality things of him and his arrogance and his love with himself and all that stuff. And then the fact that they have it very clearly, like, it wasn't clear until this book that it was hiding a darker, more, like, self-hating, broken side of him.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is, like, I don't necessarily think that him, like, hating on himself is necessarily growth in this book as much as it's a reveal. And I think that the growth is more about caring about other people.
Yeah.
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 He's
Yeah.
actually involved in his children. Like, the way he talks about, like, I would just throw demigods into these
Yeah.
situations. And now he's like, oh, these are the situations I'm
Yeah.
throwing them into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it matters. Yeah. go ahead.
Yeah, I really I knew that I would like Apollo because I
Mhm.
liked him back in the Percy Jackson
Yeah.
books, and he's one of my favorite kinds of characters,
Mhm.
like goofy, bro who has like, oh no, but actually on the inside. I love that trope.
Yeah.
And they do this really well. And Rick continues to show why Zeus sucks.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love
that was good.
I love how much Zeus is allowed to be just
Awful.
The bad guy.
Well, I think that honestly, though, at the same time, I think what makes it really interesting is that Zeus kind of has some points that are legitimate, right? Like Apollo did screw up quite a bit. Like
It's
that's debatable, I suppose. But
Zeus is not right in that he's like how he went about raising his children or disciplining him in the past, or
in
like
the current situation is all I'm talking
but,
about.
Oh, is Zeus justified in punishing Apollo for what he did relative to, giving up the oracle? Yeah, but the trauma that Zeus inflicts on Apollo and his children and the world in general is not okay.
And also, Zeus should punish himself for having dumb, stupid rules about like, oh, you shouldn't talk to anyone now because blah, blah, blah. And then he's like wrong and dumb and bad.
Yeah. Well, I guess what I'm saying, I agree where you're coming from. And I think that making him like one of the main sort of, even though if he's not like a direct antagonist, making him like a core antagonist is for the main character, I think is really good because that makes a lot of sense. I just think that it helps that you can completely hate him so that Apollo can dismiss everything that he's saying. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, but just because he sucks doesn't mean I don't suck too.
Right. Apollo is not in the right just because Zeus is wrong.
Right. Right.
But Zeus is almost always in the wrong. And I'm okay with that.
I think that's a pretty good rule of thumb. Does Zeus think it? It's probably wrong and bad.
But I really, so these are pretty famous, like the myths of the like romance tragedies that like Apollo is famous for. So like Daphne and Hyacinthus, like those are well known. Those are like fairly grounded in mythology in the sense that like they're taught and blah, blah, blah. And I appreciate the fact that he's like haunted by that. Like of all the things that he's forgotten, he's like, I've forgotten so much of what I knew as a god. I don't remember names, places, whatever. But he's like, again, the trauma is the most interesting thing about this book. Like, but I like how it's written because it's like, he refuses to acknowledge the thing that's haunting him until finally, like so many things are breaking apart. His children are gone. He's losing Meg or lost Meg, and it's accepting in those memories and his lost loves that like helps him win in the end.
And within the lost love thing, I also want to give kudos to the nonchalantness of the bisexuality and throwing in that two men can create a child via if one of them's God. I just think that like he didn't have to say that, and I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah,
I will now say it. Negative thing.
Okay.
Go for it. No.
Just like the Daphne story. So I texted Dan like as that happened, and I was like, is this whole thing going to be a sort of like apologia for like what is potentially like a rape story?
I had just talked to Dan about that this morning. Yeah.
And Dan was like, probably not. Just wait till you see. And I was like, well, all right, we will. But it worries me. And at near the end, you get this sort of like, I shouldn't have continued to pursue her. Like that was wrong.
Yeah.
But it's still sort of, this is like a famous story of like,
assault, attempted assault.
Yeah. And she chooses to like lose her being in some way rather than right, like this is not just this isn't a lost love in the same way. I mean, he sort of spins it that way by saying like I
personally think Rick handled it well, and then I'll say he's the main character of a kid's book. They couldn't have actually made him an attempted rapist,
but they didn't have to choose the story of Daphne.
Well, but I think it's by making it be that he was being controlled by Eros or whatever, like I think that they found a good middle ground where what he was doing wasn't okay, but it wasn't totally his fault, which we have to give them that allowance because it's a kid's book. Like,
it's a weird, I see where Clara is coming from in that, and I had the same thing of like, this is a weird story to like pull from,
but except it makes sense.
Except the way like he wanted to reinterpret it, like we kind of have to let go of the real world roots of it.
Yeah.
So I went into Wikipedia. I'm not saying real world, like how we interpret mythology at face value, so to speak, or like Greek studies.
Yeah.
Basically, I went into Wikipedia today, I read over, and you know how a lot of the time when you look at these myths, there's like various retellings. Yeah. There's only like one main retelling of this in the Wikipedia article, and it's adding an element that Daphne like didn't want to marry anyone ever and actually like wanted to be like Artemis and like swore to her maidenhood and her father wanted her to marry. And it was like...
Whereas this, they straight up are like, they could have fallen in love except that Eros made a negative arrow.
Yeah, like, there was potential. The whole thing of Apollo being like, hate is the opposite of love. And like, you can't make something out of nothing. So she had to care for me in some way. So it's like, there's still that like element to it that is uncomfortable. And I had that thought, but I think I was more easily able to let it go in this context than I would in some of the other Rick reinterpretations.
Yeah. And I texted Dan this at the very beginning when he just sort of like mentioned Daphne and I was like, oh my God. And then it got later on and there was a little bit more discussion. I was like, okay, I can like, this isn't one of these things that I'm like, I was just sort of like, okay.
It's not the Elvis situation.
It's not the Elvis situation. This is something that I worry about, but that hasn't crossed that line.
Yeah. Well, I totally get where you're coming from, and I think that this is the unfortunate reality that comes from when you're adapting something that's very much not for kids into something that is for kids. You know, like it's just I mean, and also just that those stories are those stories, and that they are incredibly problematic. And if you want to make those characters somewhat redeemable, you gotta mess with it a little bit. And that's the like I just don't know, other than just completely ignoring it, I don't know what else you could have really done.
Again, if one of your core things is like Hades and Persephone,
I was just gonna say,
like that's the ultimate like not okay story, a manipulation of a woman, and like not the ultimate. Zeus exists, but like that's the thing where why you can't make Zeus like really an important character because like 90% of what he does is like assault and
but even then you're never gonna make Zeus as bad as he should be.
Exactly.
You know, like, because then he just straight up you should all be on Luke's side. You know?
I am. Didn't I say I'm on Luke's side? Mostly, kind of.
Can we just feed Zeus to Kronos and everyone else can
Speaking of
be
Luke,
on their way?
I just wanted, this is jumping ahead, but when Rhea says, Western civilization should, and I was just like, I was so pleased.
Olga looked that up today.
I remember reading, I couldn't remember the quote, but I was like, something... Rick had a meta moment, and I looked it up, and I found it again, and it was literally that line.
I have it highlighted. They're tied to the course of Western civilization, even though that whole concept is imperialist, Eurocentric propaganda. Good job. Up to the top.
Ranking lines.
Yeah. Good job, Rick. You grew from point A, I suppose.
This is a total non sequitur, except for the fact that you mentioned Luke. So I want to do a little side discussion because I was thinking this the other night.
This entire podcast is side
discussion. Do you think it would hurt or help the TV show if Luke was only 2 years older than Annabeth? Because I was thinking about, if you make him less older than her, then you can actually make it a love triangle that isn't weird. And I think that would help in a lot of ways. I think it would hurt in that he's supposed to be like, he looked up to him and they found her when she was so small.
Yeah,
blah,
but like
blah.
a 6-year-old can still look up to an 8-year-old.
Yeah, especially if he is stronger and more capable of like protecting her.
And if he's 2 years older, he still had time to like go on a quest before she was able to. I think keeping them closer in age might honestly like improve the story.
Really
now,
good.
The interesting thing though, I can totally see that creating actual Luke Annabeth shippers, which I assume does not really exist right
Until
now.
you just
I
said
don't know
that.
about that.
And now I'm one.
He's like so
I know. Well, yeah, but no. In your universe that you've created.
Yeah. I mean, that would be interesting, right?
It just make it interesting, I guess. Like, put more attention into the Rachel and Annabeth and Percy thing too. Like even that had its teeth taken out, you know?
Yeah. So I don't know, just something I was thinking about. I wouldn't be upset if they did that. I think it could be kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
Please give us this show. Please, Disney Plus. Just greenlight it. Just do it.
Yeah. All right.
While we complain about this book. All right.
We're going to get into the mini recap, but first
of all, we want to send a big thank you to Maddie True Red T for their review from the UK.
Yeah, okay. I think it was a while ago, but I couldn't see it because it was on the UK.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to send us a review, you can do so at lovethepodcast.com/Riordan.
So this is a hip new thing, which is very cool because if you use that URL, no matter what device you're using, be it a Mac, PC, Android, iPhone, it will only show you the ways that you can rate, review, and rate on your platform.
That's awesome.
So like if you're like, oh, I'm on Android, I don't have Apple Podcasts to leave reviews. Well, if you go there, they will show you where you can leave reviews, and we'll get to see all of that there. So that's really cool. So read it one more time.
lovethepodcast.com/Riordan.
Thank you.
Also, you can send us feedback at ourpodcastfeedback@gmail.com. Comment on the YouTube version of this podcast / we have an actual video today. Or tweet us at Ranking Riordan.
Woo. And with that, that will be the end of part 1 of this podcast. We will have part 2 next week, just for timing and editing purposes. I know this is probably a random time that I'm putting this in there, but we'll see you next time. May the gods be ever in your favor.